Stockbridge is now a suburb of Edinburgh, but it has one notable address that was well known in the city. That was 17 Danube Street, a once infamous brothel. In 1900, at 126 Rose Street in the heart of the capital, Georgie Hunter Ray was born to Alexander Ray, a cutler, and his wife, Mary Hunter. She was the youngest of 5 children and grew up in Rose Street at a time when it was a less than salubrious place to stay, and prostitution was rife. Brought up in a poor household, when she left, and to make ends meet, Georgie found work as a housekeeper, and later, in the early 1930s, she turned to the oldest profession, prostitution. Or as she preferred to call herself later, she was a call girl, simply because she liked men. When she was 23, she gave birth to a daughter, Violet Ellen. Her father was Ernest Noyce, a joiner's handyman, but it seems that Ernest and Georgie, now known as Dora, had more of a friendship rather than a romantic involvement. Nonetheless, the child took Noyce's surname, and Dora became known as Mrs. Noyce, although there is no record of any marriage. Dora was good at her job, earning good money, plying her trade. However, she was also arrested on numerous occasions, with her first conviction in 1934 for living off the immoral earnings of others under her wing. It was after World War II that she really came into her own. She bought 17 Danube Street in 1943 for just over £4,000, and it was here she set up her house of ill repute, which lasted for over 30 years. She became a high-class madam, and even had the accent to match. When she was younger, she taught herself to speak in the Morningside brogue, and for the rest of her life insisted on speaking that way. She would always be seen in a fur coat, twin set, and pearls, having an air of respectability about her. In all, she would be charged with brothel keeping and similar offences 26 times, even spending time in jail, although she had 47 criminal convictions by the time she died. When she faced the charges, Dora simply admitted to the police that she was doing what comes naturally. She had a pattern when she faced these charges. She would pay the fine, which she did in cash, then would keep a low profile for a few days, before getting Danube Street up and running once more. Her home consisted of 2 floors, essentially 17 and 17A. One of the rooms she kept private for herself, while the rest of the premises was sublet in cubicles to her 15 resident girls. She also owned other property in Edinburgh and in Blackpool, but there was no evidence to suggest any of these were run as brothels. The top floor of Danube Street was kept solely for the high Hegians, those in prestigious jobs or power, while the lower floor was for ordinary punters. Dora knew she could trust her girls, and whoever their clients were was never revealed. She was also a shrewd businesswoman. She made a deal with the local constabulary that they could raid her premises every 6 months, and in return she would give them intelligence about Edinburgh's criminal underworld, especially information regarding stolen goods. On greeting them, she would quip, "Business or pleasure, gentlemen?" It never fazed Dora that these events would see her name in the newspapers. After all, she once told a captive audience at Deacon Brodie's at the Lawn Market that no publicity was bad publicity, although she did insist reporters got her address correct. along with the resident girls at the brothel, a name she hated for her premises, preferring it to be called a house of leisure and pleasure, or a YMCA with extras, Dora had another 25 she could call on during busy times. These were when the Edinburgh International Festival was on in August, and she also claimed when the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland was meeting in May. Was this a quip about the church meeting, or was it true? She was known to attend church every Sunday. It seems she also cared for the girls, as they were regularly given health checks, including for sexually transmitted diseases, although this was enshrined in law. As time went on, 17 Danube Street became infamous and was also the place to go. However, in March 1955, Dora was sentenced to 6 months in jail, having been found guilty of having kept, managed, or acted or assisted in the management of brothels, not only in Danube Street, but also in William Street and Line Street. During the trial, it was alleged she'd received money from prostitutes who used the premises. It was also stated the young women had not been corrupted by her. Once in the early 1970s, the aircraft carrier, the USS John F. Kennedy, docked at Leith, and the sailors, knowing about the brothel, ended up standing in a queue in the street, waiting to be seen. The captain soon had to declare the street off-limits to the sailors, but that really didn't matter to Dora, who made around £4,000 in the meantime. The brothel had its critics, especially some of the neighbours. One, Mary McBeath, ran a respectable guest house and wasn't too happy that there was a brothel next door. She would take her camera and photograph the men coming and going from the premises, then threatened to tell their wives. However, it was believed the camera never had any film in it. On 31st May 1972, Dora was hauled up in front of magistrates again. This time, the sheriff, Victor Skay, wasn't quite so lenient. She pleaded guilty to charges of keeping, managing, or helping in the management of a brothel, and was sentenced to 2 3-month stints in jail to run consecutively. After 4 months, she was released, and on her release told waiting reporters that it was silly of the sheriff to give her a jail sentence, as she was just a burden to the ratepayers. This was the last time she was jailed, although not her last court appearance. In September 1973, Dora was interviewed at length, just days after paying yet another fine of £250, her 32nd court appearance. She said that she'd been in prison more times than she could remember, but called it going on vacation. By this time, she had 8 girls at her house, but her phone was still ringing and appointments still kept her books full. She described Danube Street as a very refined sort of place. I wouldn't have it otherwise, and my girls are very refined too. I take quite a pride in polishing the rough edges and teaching them how to dress and talk. It was a place, she said, men could let off steam, and that a number of famous people had visited. But, she said, no names, no pack drill was her motto. Talking money, she said her prices ranged from £3 to £30, but added that she didn't add any VAT. Dora was a Conservative all her life, and during election campaigns was known to place party posters in her windows, much to the disdain of the candidate. She also attended fêtes, which again the local Conservatives felt uncomfortable with. On Monday, 3rd June 1974, through her counsel, she admitted keeping the brothel once more. The Deputy Procurator Fiscal, Alan Friedman, said the charge spoke for itself, and her defence counsel, Thomas McGee, told the Sheriff Neil McVicken that she was probably the oldest girl in the oldest profession, and that her age is catching up with her. She wasn't present in the court due to ill health, so the sheriff gave her 4 weeks to pay her £250 fine. Dora Noyes died in July 1977, aged 77, and although her girls tried to keep the business going, it closed soon after, and the building was redeveloped into flats.